Hey guys, welcome to LALoveCreative, and today we're going to talk about the iPhone 15 Pro Max versus a actual photography camera. Let's go. Now, I've done this in the past on this channel where I've compared a iPhone to a mirrorless camera. I did this with the A7 III back in the day, with my iPhone 10, and I think also my iPhone 11. And for the most part, I think if you're in a situation, the iPhone is a very capable camera, even those older cameras back in the day, older iPhones. But I think the iPhone 15 Pro Max is now at a level where we're really seeing the benefits of technology, and we're really getting to a point where it's a little harder to distinguish between a professional mirrorless camera image and a phone image that is being captured on the phone camera. Now, I'm not saying that you can replace having a professional camera. Obviously, having a professional camera is the way to go if you want to be a professional photographer or a professional videographer. But I think in certain situations, the iPhone camera is starting to get to a point where the quality is starting to stand out from a videography standpoint and also a photography standpoint. Now, I had an idea for a fashion shoot where I wanted to shoot something a little bit more lifestyle, outside, in a urban environment, and I think the photos turned out great. And while I was shooting with my Canon R6, I thought this would be a great situation for me to test out not only the photography capabilities of the iPhone 15 Pro Max, but also the videography and the filmmaking possibilities with this phone. So not only does this camera have a 48 megapixel sensor, which makes awesome, amazing photography images, but it also has a awesome new feature from the filmmaking side, which is the Apple Log. Now on this channel, I've talked about Apple Log in my last video where I talked about accessories for the iPhone, and the Apple Log is really a testament to the quality that you can capture with this camera, and I will talk about that later in this video. Now, the first setup, I wanted to do something playful. I had her in a dress and some cowboy boots and a cowboy hat, and we just played around, had fun shooting in front of like a pink house, and then we also shot in front of like a burger joint, and I thought the photos turned out really great. And when I was taking the photos with the iPhone and also taking video with the iPhone, I was really surprised at the quality of both. And when I compared these images later in post, it was actually kind of hard for me to figure out which, once I edited the images and corrected them and all that, it was kind of hard for me to figure out which one was the Canon R6 and which one was the iPhone. And I think a few things give it away, but here's a selection of some images. Let me know which one you think is the camera and which one is the iPhone, and let's go. Now, for some of you, it might be kind of easy because I shoot wide open on my lenses. I was using a Sigma 24-70 f2.8 on my Canon R6, and I was shooting that at f2.8 for pretty much all the images. So I think one of the things that's going to give away iPhone footage when it comes to videography and also photography is the fact that the sensor is still a small sensor. So having that bokeh, having that beautiful blurry background is going to be hard to achieve with a actual phone. Yes, there's cinematic mode on this camera. Sometimes that's okay, but you can't use cinematic mode with log. So you're really in a situation where if you want to shoot log, which I highly suggest, or if you want to shoot a raw photo, you're not going to be able to blur the background like portrait mode or anything like that. So what gives away, I think, a iPhone image versus a professional mirrorless image would be the lens selection and also just the depth of field that you can achieve with the actual photography camera. Another thing I think that gives away the iPhone images when you're actually looking at these images is also the clarity of the background. Like I said, it won't be out of focus, but it's also almost getting everything in focus. And I think one of the best ways to mitigate this and not worry about it is to get your subject as close to the lens as possible so that you get some type of depth of field there. But I think if you're looking at the right spots, it's kind of easy to tell which one is the iPhone and which one is the mirrorless camera, especially if you are shooting wide open on a mirrorless camera. Now, the iPhone has multiple lenses. From my thought process, I would say that the 24mm, the standard lens on the camera, is going to give you the best quality if you really are trying to preserve the best quality with these images. So 24mm on this camera is probably the best way you want to go. And then also shooting 48 megapixel RAWs. I know that there's a new format that reduces the file sizes, but if you're really looking for the highest quality, I suggest shooting the RAW because the RAW is going to give you the best flexibility in post. Now, the second look I did was we were walking, we found this really cool apartment building and we started shooting in it, and this guy who actually lived in the apartment building was like, hey, come on up. So we got to shoot in this apartment building like area that was really cool. It almost felt like it was not in LA. Very old school, vintage looking building. Marilyn Monroe actually lived in this apartment building. So we got to shoot in this little cool outside apartment area. We had a trench coat. It was actually a really hot day, but I wanted it to feel kind of more moody. We messed around in this area. It was cool because it had brick, it had a lot of greenery, and I think the images in the video turned out really good. The color on the iPhone kind of skews a little bit more, I would say a little bit more magenta, a little bit more of that type of vibe, a little bit more cooler as well. So if you are, even if you match white balances on both the camera and the phone, the iPhone kind of skews a little bit more magenta and a little bit more bluer, a little cooler when it came to the tone. So just keep that in mind. So here's some photos from the second look, and you let me know which one you think is the iPhone and which one is the Canon R6. Last setup of the day is I had this beautiful two-piece set. It was a green set. The model had these burgundy boots, and we were walking around a neighborhood, and we found a couple Mercedes Benzes that were old vintage cars. The guy came out that owned them. We talked a little bit. He didn't care that we were shooting in front of his cars, which was awesome. And we just had a lot of good luck that day when we were shooting. From a photography standpoint, it's not as good as my mirrorless camera, obviously, but I think the images turned out really great, and I think there's a good amount of potential with each image, and you can really bring it out in post when you shoot raw. From a videography standpoint, I was using the Blackmagic app for a lot of these clips. This allowed me to shoot a 4K 60p ProRes LT file and really get some really cool slow motion that I really doubt anybody would know is from an iPhone. If I put it up on the screen, and you'd have to really pixel peep to tell that this is an iPhone image. I think Apple Log is one of the biggest advancements for Apple. It is just such a beautiful image coming out of such a small sensor and such a small device. And I'm really blown away with the image and the quality. One of my main takeaways with the iPhone images versus the mirrorless camera is when you're shooting with the iPhone actually is doing a lot to your images as far as processing, sharpening, balancing the images. So you don't have that manual control that you would have with a professional mirrorless camera. Obviously, it's just an iPhone. But one of the things that I've noticed is when you let Apple do, what it wants to do to the image, that's when you really can tell it's an iPhone image, when you can really tell it's not a professional camera when you're shooting it. But when you shoot RAW or when you shoot Apple Log, you're really allowing yourself to have an image where you can play around with it and push and pull and make the images your own. And I think when you have that capability, you really are unlocking the potential of this camera. I think for a beginner, this camera is an exceptional tool. It is just that. It is a tool for whatever you need when it comes to a additional angle where you're shooting log, a photography camera in the right hands. I've seen creatives make some stellar, amazing work with this camera. Will it replace your Canon? Will it replace your Sony? No, but it's a great step forward for the iPhone, and I think I'm really excited to see what happens in the next 10 years. There could be a chance where this could replace your mirrorless camera, and I think Apple and all, the technology in here is really moving in the right direction. So that's all I have to say about the iPhone 15 Pro Max versus a professional photography camera. I really am impressed by the iPhone 15 Pro Max, and I can't wait to do more traveling. I can't wait to shoot more behind the scenes with this camera because I am really impressed by it. That's all I have to say today in this video. If you have any questions about videography or photography, let me know in the comments below, and I will see you next time. Peace.